Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very, very excited and honored to be interviewing a very, very special space champion, Miss Meredith Garofalo. Miss Garofalo is an award-winning and Emmy-nominated certified broadcast meteorologist and a science and space correspondent. She is currently a senior meteorologist for News12 New York, covering the Hudson Valley, Long Island, and the tri-state region. She was the 2021 chair for the AMS Station Scientist Committee, which focuses on raising greater awareness and outreach when it comes to science education for viewers. Furthermore, Ms. Garofalo frequents as a panel moderator at the Space Symposium and Satellite Conference, a judge for the Space Foundation Space Technology Hall of Fame, and moderator of Foundation for the Future. She spends countless hours doing school, career, and motivational talks and podcasts to help encourage women to pursue STEM careers and inspire our future generations. She moderates panels, serves as an MC for events, and conducts interviews to further storytell on space and science topics. And as we all know, communication is key in this industry. I was incredibly inspired to hear Ms. Garofalo's journey, especially when I saw her on the top 100 professionals to follow on LinkedIn 2022. And I'm so excited to be able to speak with her off of a LinkedIn connection. We were able to get this going. So welcome, Ms. Garofalo. Thank you so much for taking your time to inspire the next generation of aerospace leaders.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to meet you because you're clearly leading the way with what you're doing. So it's an honor to be talking with you today.
Thank you. Yeah, to just kick off our conversation, I wanted to start off by asking you about your typical day. I know usually there is never a typical day, but how do you usually like to run your day?
At work or like personal? Because every
Um,
single day for me is just so different.
at work usually.
So I have been in television and broadcasting now for 15 years, and I literally went straight from college right into the business, which has been great. But being a meteorologist, I normally come into work. I have a team meeting. I prep my TV station on what the weather's going to be doing, not just today, but what I'm seeing in the stories or any science stories that I'm working on or that I think that they should check out, which is always fun too. And then I dive into forecasting for my specific region that I'm covering for the day, whether it's the Hudson Valley, which I do 5 days a week, or Long Island, or I put together a tri state forecast, which covers the New York City metro area into New Jersey and Connecticut. So it's a pretty busy my first half of my shift. I record some stuff that runs on our radio and traffic channel. And then I have several newscasts throughout the day. I'm on at 3, 5, 8, and 10. And then on the weekends, I have show things too. I do a lot of social media work, and then I work with my team to put our broadcasts on the air and also put stuff out on social media for viewers. And so, like you said, no 2 days are the same. I could be covering a blizzard, I could be covering a severe weather outbreak, I could be covering sunshine and warm weather in the winter, which it's been so far for us. And some days I am lucky enough to read a space story or work on a space story or a science story, which is my favorite because, like you were saying, storytelling and communicating is so important. And I have been so blessed that I'm not just a scientist that does the weather. I'm also a scientist that knows how to write and report and communicate stories and make them easy to understand, even though, as we know, with science, technology, a lot of STEM and space, it's very complicated. So taking all the nitty gritty and making it easy for people to understand at home.
Wow, yeah, and especially what you were saying at the end, I think it embodies why I personally was really excited to speak with you because I've met a lot of scientists and engineers and a lot of individuals who are interested in STEM, and it's quite difficult for them to go into a public setting or to take the initiative to communicate their work because it's very difficult, it's very complicated, and it's hard to bring it down to layman terms or terms that everyone can understand. And so I think it's critical that as we're expanding the space sector, we're looking for more funding, more investments, and more recognition for the work the industry is doing. Communication is critical as we just continuously expand this industry. And the work that you're doing in making sure we're creating that bridge between, everyone else in the space sector is so critical. So I want to thank you so much for that. And with your diverse experiences from keynoting, the moderating the panels, and doing a lot of communication with space stories, what is your number one goal as a STEM communicator? And what do you hope to really achieve by sharing all these space stories with the general public?
I think one of the most important things is just showing that diversity of whoever I'm talking to, whether it's where they came from, whether it's their education, whether their story starts from having nothing and working their way up. Everyone's story is different, and everyone's story has to be told in a way that truly encompasses everything that they are and everything that they want people to know about them. And so my goal is always to, one, as we talked about, make it easy to understand whether your 5-year-old daughter is watching it or your 95-year-old grandmother, because there's a way that can be easy and simple, but also get the point across. And unfortunately, sometimes we just see things that are just put out there. You can read it and move on. But one of the questions I always ask myself is, if I was watching this, what would I want to take from it? What would I want to learn about this person? What's the main focus of their story? Is it a personal story that they're making their career? Is it a passion? And then when I'm telling a story, it's so important to leave at the end of a story with people wanting more. I mean, we think of our favorite movies and our favorite books, and you want to know where they're going next. Is there going to be a part two? And so whenever I'm telling stories, I want people to leave saying, I can't wait to see what's happening next, or I want to learn more about this person. And so I think that's one of the critical things with storytelling is you need to bring somebody in. I mean, we think about, especially as women, when we talk to our best friends and our girlfriends, we love telling stories. And so finding ways to make it interesting, keep the conversations going, but also keep it interesting. And if someone doesn't understand something, be open to saying, okay, how can I better communicate this to you next time? Or how can I better explain this to you so then you are on the same page as me?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's perfectly put together. And also, what you were mentioning about making sure these stories are really accessible to a diverse audience, I think is one of the critical pieces as we're looking to bridge the talent gap in the aerospace sector. Aerospace has been, historically a very, exclusive industry with a lot of very talented folks, but also it's very hard. We're starting to improve the diversity and the accessibility to the industry in the coming years. We've been really working on that, but it historically hasn't been. And if we can show that space is more than just rocket science, there's so many other elements and components to it, and you can understand physics if you break it down correctly and properly, and you can be a rocket scientist yourself, and we can show that to a diverse audience, we can get more students captivated in joining this industry. Recently I was reading the survey by Lego, and it was saying that growing up for students, one of the top 5 careers is becoming an astronaut. And when I grow up and you tell someone in high school or college, I want to be an astronaut, they kind of look at you like that's kind of a child's dream. It's not very realistic. And hopefully we can change that narrative around and show people that you can become an astronaut and space is not unrealistic, or you don't have to be a genius. I think there's a lot of other, jobs, a lot of other opportunities that are not come across off. And so hopefully through communication and storytelling, we can really bridge that talent gap.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And, I think the thing is, space is for everybody. It's always been for everybody. We have a lot more resources now than we did back in the day. And so we need to use those resources. I mean, I have to laugh because you talked about physics. I am a meteorologist. I have a Bachelor of Science, and I was terrible at physics. I was terrible at math. I was struggling my whole 4 years of college, but I didn't give up. I got mentors, I got tutors, and I talked to my professors, and they found through my passion it was what I wanted to do. And so I think that really hits home that, you don't have to be the best at everything, but when you have the passion inside of you and it's something you want, you live for it every single day.
Yeah. I know so many students who look at the physics and look at the math, the calculus, and they get scared and they end up being like, okay, this is not for me. And I think what you just said of it's that passion, and if you're interested and intrigued, then you can surpass that. And you can still be successful and do a lot of other things in the space sector. So that's very comforting to hear, especially because I know a lot of other my peers, my friends who go away from the space sector just because of that fact of how difficult physics and calculus can be. And when you were speaking, one of the things I really loved is your energy and how excited you are to talk about your job and the work that you're doing in space communication. And so I'm really curious to hear about your journey. So, what was the aha moment that inspired you to get into space, meteorology, and combine it all with your passion in communicating with others? How did this whole story evolve for you?
It's fun to share my story because literally it started when I was 3 years old. My mom survived a tornado outbreak in Ohio, and she told me this story. And I know we always feel like things happen for a reason. And if you believe in serendipity like I do, and your calling, I heard this story as a child, and immediately I wanted to help save lives and warn people of bad storms. And so back in the day, we had what's called a Fisher Price tape recorder, little cassette tapes, and almost like doing a Facebook Live, but this was way back before we even had Facebook. And so I would make my own forecasts. I would record them on my little microphone, and I'd warn people there were tornadoes coming and stuff like that. And I started to watch all these videos and movies on weather and tornadoes and severe weather. And the more I got into it, the more I found it was like I was passionate about. And it's funny, I was at an event last night at the Creative Aviation Museum here on Long Island, and we were looking through telescopes, and it reminded me, I'd forgotten about this, that when I was a little girl, in addition to my weather stuff, I had a plastic telescope. And it was nothing like the telescope I was looking through last night. But I think that just kind of showed there was a little bit of a space girl in me, but I didn't really go into that because I was so focused on that first part of who I am, which was weather. And then got into, went to school, got my degree in meteorology, started my broadcasting career. And it wasn't until 2017 that I was covering a story at my TV station I was working at in Santa Barbara, California. And I was covering the NOAA GOES satellites, the first one. And I didn't know a lot about satellites, but I knew a lot about weather. And then I started to talk to people at NASA and NOAA and learn the cool things that were happening above us with these weather satellites. And then I realized there's a lot about this that is not being told but to the public. And I also have been a reporter in my career in addition to being an on-air meteorologist. And I realized that they needed someone to tell stories, but also that could understand a little bit more than nitty gritty, which as a scientist, nitty gritty is my middle name. So I just started to get into storytelling, started making connections like you. I went on places like LinkedIn so I could connect with these scientists and astrophysicists. And the more I started reaching out, the more opportunities I was getting to interview these people, and the more I was becoming well known in the broadcasting industry across not just locally, but the country with my job after that,
Oh.
working for National Weather Channel. And I was sitting down with people from NASA and SpaceX and NOAA, and they were sharing their stories with me, and they could feel my passion. So they would open up, and then I was starting to tell their stories. And then somebody else would hear, and then they want to tell me their story. And I covered my first launch in 2018, and it was the second GOES satellite out of the four series from Cape Canaveral in Florida. It's like it lit the fire inside of me even more. And I realized I need to become Rocket Girl, which you might see my hashtags. I use that a lot because I wanted to be something different and take my established career already to a whole different level and become a space and science correspondent, which is what I do now. And there are very few space and science correspondents that are also scientists like myself. So I'm kind of starting this new trend in the TV business where I'm using one part of my life to help with my storytelling in another. And it's just grown. And that's where I started getting calls. Can you moderate this panel? Because I'm a public figure. I have a privilege every single day to go out and be a role model to people. And so Space Foundation would call me, and the Satellite Conference would call me. And next thing you know, Foundation for the Future, I've traveled to DC for a Washington Business Roundtable with members of the White House and the Department of Education. And the more and more I'm doing this, the more and more people are seeing my passion, And then the more people I can help with what I do.
Wow, yeah, your journey and the way you approached your whole, I guess, career is just so mind-blowing and so inspiring for students like myself who are interested in more of the interdisciplinary route. I'm interested in space medicine, and people would be like, "Oh, is that even a real career? Like, is that something you could like do in the future?" And I'd be like, "Yes, it's real. Trust me, it's real." And so when I see people who are doing what I like, connecting with them on LinkedIn, like you were mentioning, we have such a great tool in front of us, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, where you can directly reach out to the coolest people in the world, people you admire, and maybe you'll get a response back from them. And taking advantage of that tool to make those connections, develop that network and that family, to be able to really do what you love. And you weren't nervous or you weren't scared, at least from what you were saying, that to discover or create your own career or your own job. People, are a lot of times are hesitant. They're like, I don't think this career exists. But I always tell them whenever someone tells me that, I'm like, hey, you can create your own career. You can be the first person who ever does that. And I think in the next 10 years, I don't even think it's going to be career based. I think it's going to be skills based and what you're passionate about. And you can, combine all your different passions together to develop your dream job because I don't think there's a straight path. So I'm really, really glad to hear your journey and how networking was such a huge part of it, but also how you kept putting yourself out there and taking those risks and becoming more comfortable with what your true passion was. So I'm glad you found your inner rocket girl.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, you just encompass everything. And by the way, thank you for reaching out to me because we wouldn't have been connected. So you are another shining star example of what to do for keep inspiring the ones underneath us because we had mentors for us. And then you become the mentor, and then it's your responsibility to help other people. And so I think what you're doing is great. And yes, do what you want. Like, that's the thing. I never thought sitting here now, I thought I would have a straight career in TV and weather, and that was it. Now I'm in a whole different chapter of my life. And I'll tell you, right in this chapter, my life is so much fun.
I love that. Yeah, I think paying it forward is so important. And I'm glad that, that was the biggest learning curve for me when I was in high school. I was really nervous to send that message or to reach out to people who were so much more accomplished than me. I mean, I was just a student. I didn't think anybody would really care or have the time to respond. But I was so surprised and so shocked with how willing people were to spend their time to talk about their story, to give advice to young students. And so I think it's all about just putting yourself out there and taking those tiny risks. And throughout this journey, of course, like it all seemed like it was like a snowball effect, just kept rolling and rolling, getting bigger and bigger. And throughout this journey, did you have obstacles? And if so, how were you able to overcome these obstacles?
Well, when you talk about a snowball and it's coming down a hill, there is no hill that is perfect, right? You're going to have rocks, you're going to have trees. Sometimes you're going to have a cliff. I mean, that's the thing about every journey. I can sit here and it may sound like it was perfect and everything fell into place, but it wasn't. And I will be the first person to admit that. I have had so many challenges behind closed doors, behind the scenes, and even publicly. When I was growing up, I was bullied by students in my class. When I was in elementary school and middle school, like you, I had this passion, this dream, and kids made fun of me because of it. And I looked different than them. I had glasses. I wasn't fitting in because I had such a big dream at such a young age. So kids made fun of me. I, had some issues with being supported. And that was tough. And then even when I was going to college, like I said, I was not good at math and science. And I had a professor my freshman year come to me and say, I really think you should reconsider your career because I don't think you can pass these classes to get this degree. That was my professor my freshman year that told me that. And I watched other girls in my classes drop out of the major because they didn't think they could do it. And I thought about it. And then even when I got my degree, I struggled through college, but I got my degree and I got into my first TV job right out of college. And I made some mistakes that I learned from, and I ended up losing that job very quickly. And that taught me a lot. And I had another TV station I was at in my career where I went there, and one of the managers, both of those times, I took a step back and was asking myself, and it wasn't anything I was doing. It was because those people either didn't believe in me or they didn't, want to give me a chance. But as I was just telling another friend of mine the other day, that rejection is redirection. And you may is those situations in life where your path changes. You're on the same journey your whole life, but sometimes your path might go into the weeds, or your path might end and you have to turn around and go back and find one a couple miles back. But that's part of the journey. I mean, I've had managers at my TV stations not support me. I've had coworkers that I've dealt with bullying, and I never gave up. I wanted to. I'm not gonna lie. I can't just sit here and say, "Oh my gosh," I was like, "No, I'm great. I'm happy." There was a lot of nights I'd cry in bed, or I would go into the bathroom and hang my head and say, "What am I doing with my life?" But at the end of the day, I'm somebody who is very much into faith, and I believe everything happens for a reason, and I trust God with my life. And I really do feel like I continue to move in the right direction because I never give up. I take those negative experiences as a positive, because it's like a wave. Your wave's going to go down, you're going to hit rock bottom, and you can't go down anymore, right? So the only thing you have to do is go back up. You have to brush off and stand up. And sometimes you have to sit there for a couple of days and take some deep breaths and call your best friends or your mentors or your family and say, "Hey, I need help right now." It's not a bad or weak thing to ask for help. It's actually good, because that's going to help you going right back, stand up and keep going on the journey. So I've had a lot of adversity. I've had a lot of struggles. I've had struggles with mental health. I've had emotional struggles. But at the end of the day, as long as I stay true to myself and what I want out of life, I know that the right people will be there for me, and that anything is possible if you always just keep moving forward. Even if it feels like you're going back, you're still moving forward. You just have to keep that positive mental attitude.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredibly powerful. I want to really thank you for being so honest and so open about some of the experiences you've had. I think it's so easy, especially for students or even other professionals in the industry, to look at someone's accomplishments or achievements, their social media, and be really not know the full story and just be like, wow, they were destined for this, and they just had it easy their whole life. And then you hear their journey, and you're like, wow, it wasn't so easy. And maybe there's a lot of points that a lot of other students can relate with. And I personally was able to relate with so many of the things you said. But I think the biggest statement that I think was encapsulates what you were saying is, rejection is a redirection. I think that's so powerful. And it's such a good way to look at a failure, because it's not really a failure. It's just another way for you to learn a lesson and maybe make your life even better going forward. Or maybe you're going to get another opportunity. I think the biggest thing for me was, when I was in high school, I would apply for these internships or these summer experiences, and I wouldn't get into all of them. And I knew that I wasn't even qualified for some of them to get in. But I remember this quote that my parents would tell me when I used to play basketball, which is, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And they always used to tell me, like, I don't care if you don't think you're good for this, but you should at least try, right? Because if you don't, if by not applying, you're 100% not going to get in. But if you
Right.
try, hey, you at least have a chance. So I think what you were mentioning about taking that risks again, but also having that positive attitude towards every failure, just makes you a better person. And I think that's something that I will definitely take to heart. And I'm sure every single person who's listening really thanks you for being so honest, and will hopefully take that with them as well as they go forward.
And no, it's work. It's work in progress. I'm at
Right.
where I'm at now, and I can be open about this. But 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I didn't want to talk about getting fired. I was embarrassed. I didn't
Yeah.
want to talk about being bullied. I didn't want to talk about the abuse I went through. But it's through your journey and through the amazing people you get that walk with you that will help you open up. And that's the thing, is it takes work. I can't just tell you that tomorrow you're going to take this tonight and be like, tomorrow's a great day.
Yeah.
And it's something really say you can't. And if you're not meant to, you'll know. but that shouldn't be something someone else tells you. That should be something
Right.
inside of you that says, you know what? It's not that I can't do this, but there's something better for me. Or I'm getting that sign or that
Right.
whatever it is that's saying I
Mhm.
should go this direction instead of that
Right.
direction. You have to trust yourself over everything else.
Yeah. And I've interviewed a few other, young professionals or younger students, and they would tell me they had the imposter syndrome, or they were the only they're the only girl in a physics classroom or rocketry club. One of the hosts for NASA's Ask an Astrobiologist show, and he was telling me how he went through a phase where he had like drug addiction and opioid addiction, and how he overcame that. And I think there's a lot of these really powerful stories as well that always just keep re-emphasizing what you were saying, which is, there's always, light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to keep going and keep following that, drive you have, that passion you have, and keep trusting yourself. And, with your experiences in the show business, and, you probably have come across so many different articles, so many news, so many stories, so many cool facts and interesting articles that you probably have had the chance to read about. And I'm curious, that must have built up a lot of insight in the aerospace sector. So I'm curious about your opinion on the space industry kind of going forward. What are you most excited about, and what are you most nervous about the future of the aerospace sector?
Well, I'm really excited just to see where it goes because generations before, I mean, we go way back to when we first got in the space race and we watch these movies and read these books about it. And you can feel that same type of excitement with the shuttle era. And then now you're feeling
Yeah.
this with the Artemis generation. So it's history repeating itself in a way that with these generations, with the new technology, with the stuff we're doing, it's the same thing. And I'm getting goosebumps right now, which is always a sign that I'm connected to what I'm talking about. And I'm sure you can relate to that. Something really good happens. You're like, oh my God, this is great.
Yeah.
I think I'm just really excited to see us take technology and take everything we've learned over the years from the mistakes
Mhm.
and the successes and make this journey to space. And it's not going to be easy by any means. I mean, personally, I want to be the first female meteorologist to be in space, whether it's going up on a mission or doing something short term, because there's been men that have been in space that are meteorologists, but never female. And so that's something I'm working on right now personally. But it's not just about being first this, first that. If someone else goes up behind me, hey, good for her. I will high five her and be like, you go, girl. But I still want to do it in my own way. And I want to do it in something that it feels to me like it's an accomplishment. And, I thought in my career, just for really example, and then I'll kind of go back to your question, I had it all planned out. I was going to be working for a major TV network by the time I turned 30. That didn't happen. Now, a few years later after I turned 30, it happened. But I think sometimes we have to look at our goals and also have kind of that give and take. It's almost like an experiment, right? You have that margin of error. You
Mhm.
can't be afraid of the margin of error because sometimes you might go above or beyond it and or under it. And it's just all part of our story. And so I think what I'm most excited about is just seeing everyone who's got these exciting ideas and motivations and technology and ideas for space and making them a reality, making this part of our history, just like the history we've looked at in the space industry is history to us. We're creating our stories that are going to be told hundreds of years from now. And I think I'm just so excited to see women like you and your classmates and guys and people from all different backgrounds and generations and heritages standing up for what they believe in and creating their own stories. And I think it's just going to be really cool 10, 15, 20 years from now. I mean, hopefully I'll meet you maybe up in space and we'll be like, do you remember when we had this conversation? But that's the thing is it's like we have so much to look forward to. And when we work together, when we motivate and encourage each other and we're not afraid to help each other, because look, at the end of the day, we all have individual goals. They might be similar to somebody else, but it's really not a competition. What's meant to be is going to be. And the minute you realize that, it really is going to help you because when you don't get the job you want or don't get the internship you want, even though at the minute it's like, oh, I really wanted that, you're going to get something else and then be like, oh no, I really wanted this. That's how it always works out.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. And I really have to agree with what you're mentioning, especially at the beginning about the generations like the Apollo and that the Artemis. And I think the Artemis generation really is the launches are inspiring so many young students to get into the space industry. And now space is starting to become something that everyone is seeing, whether it be also with the commercialization, the Blue Origin SpaceX launches. People are starting to think of space and to really question like what is its importance and are starting to learn more about the industry, which makes me incredibly excited just to see all the future students who will be pursuing this career path. And I definitely 100% believe that you can become the first female meteorologist in space. I think you have that passion, that drive, and hopefully we both can see each other in space. I hope that one day happens and we look back at this conversation. But I think there's so much to look forward to, and that's what I love about space in general. There's just so much to do, so much to learn, so many curiosities we need to unravel, and I think that's what I love most about space. So I'm glad that we were able to kind of connect on that point and are looking forward to that future. And now that we're
Yes,
able to
we're
learn
space sisters.
Yes, yes, of course. And now that we're able to learn about your journey as well as some of your work you're doing and your insights, my last and final question for you is we've learned you've given plenty of incredible and really important advice throughout this interview. But what's one final piece of advice you would give to every young student regarding their pursuit of a passion in aerospace, STEM, really just any career, a piece of advice you wish you knew when you were younger? So imagine if you could kind of travel back in time and give the mini you like some piece of advice. What would that advice be?
That's a really good question. And it's always hard to answer. And I feel like it changes every time based on, things I've been through lately. But first off, the galaxy is the limit. I love to say that because now, as we've seen with the James Webb Space Telescope, that galaxy is not even ending. It keeps going and going and going. And so it's
Yeah.
not just the sky. Now it's the galaxy. Just know that everything and anything is possible. And keep your chin up, even those times that are hard. You might need to look down and cry a little bit, but keep that chin up. Don't let people tell you you're not worth it, because you are at the end of the day. And as I said earlier, everything that you believe in you, that your real friends, your real family, your mentors believe in you, that's all the truth. And that's all that should matter. And if you want something in life, it doesn't matter where you came from. It doesn't matter how much money you had growing up. If you had nothing growing up, you can still do what you want, but you have to keep yourself first and foremost, the most important thing. You have to make sure you're happy. You make sure you're being your true, authentic self, because it's very easy to go with the flow and be like other people. You don't want to be like other people. You want to be your own person, because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And people will love you for you, and people are going to hate you for you. And that's okay. That's their choice. But as long as you love yourself, and as long as you're happy and you're making every single day count, because we're never guaranteed tomorrow, then you are living your best life and you are going to accomplish anything and everything you want. Challenges, successes, falls and rises. You're going to get there eventually, I promise.
Thank you so much for that incredible, powerful statement. I think it really just it encapsulates the spirit of this interview of really inspiring everyone to follow their passions and to keep their chin up as they achieve their own goals, their own dreams they have in mind. And just knowing that, the galaxy is not even the limit. There's so much more beyond, and how we can just keep pushing and keep going forward. There's so much to experience is advice that I will definitely take to heart. And I'm sure every single person who's listening is incredibly inspired by the work you're doing. So thank you so much for taking your time to do this interview. I had an incredible time speaking with you. I absolutely love your energy, and I really hope we get to meet in person one day.
We will. I'm going to make that happen, and you're going to make that happen. And thank you for being so passionate and doing something like this and reaching out to so many people, because it's people like you that are our next generation. And it's people like you that my generation is watching to be the change this world and other worlds need.
Thank you.